The click of her heels echoed against the empty sidewalk as Isabella Rivera crossed Melrose, the warmth of the gala still clinging to her skin. Gold fabric shimmered beneath the streetlights, custom gown that had hugged every movement on stage as she spoke about equity, education, and opportunity. Now, under the soft hum of city silence, she just wanted to get home, unpin her hair, and soak her feet. She clutched her clutch closer, the chill of midnight creeping in. The driver she'd booked had texted last-minute an accident on Fairfax. He'd said so she'd decided to walk the final 10 blocks. It felt fine. Normal. She didn't hear the cruiser at first. It rolled up slowly behind her, headlights dimmed, as if stalking a target. She glanced back instinctively habit. Not fear, but the tension began to rise in her shoulders. Female, mid-20s, Hispanic. Fits the description. A voice crackled over the patrol car radio. A deep voice barked from the open window. "Hey, you stop right there!" She froze, heels clicking to a halt. She turned, slowly, carefully, confusion tightening her brow. "Is there a problem, ID?" The white officer stepped out, hand hovering at his waist. The second followed. Suit, his eyes scanning her gown like it was a disguise. What's going on?" she asked. Her voice was steady, but already she could feel her pulse pounding behind her ears. "I'm just walking home." "From where?" "A charity event. My name is Isabella Rivera." They didn't blink. "Got ID?" She reached for her clutch. Slowly, she did. But as her hand slid toward the zipper, the taller officer moved fast. "Hands up." She startled. "I'm just getting my hands." "Up." She dropped the clutch. Her hands rose. Her voice cracked. "I didn't do anything." The officer closed the gap in seconds. Cold metal clamped around her wrists. "Stop resisting." "Not resisting." Her voice trembled as the second officer yanked her arms tighter behind her. She winced, gasping as the handcuffs bit into skin. From a second-story balcony, someone watched. The officers pressed her forward toward the squad car. "You match the description? Just routine." "I haven't done anything," she whispered again. But the words evaporated into the night. She stood trembling at the door of the cruiser, heart pounding, eyes burning with tears. Her body was caught in disbelief, like her limbs hadn't registered what was happening. The taller officer squinted at her wrist. "Cartier? Probably fake." She didn't respond. Couldn't. Her breath caught in her chest, cold and sharp. Palm trees swayed gently overhead, oblivious. A dog barked in the distance. The hum of traffic was a world away. In this corner of Los Angeles, she was alone. Just another girl in a gold dress, just another brown face on the street. A voice inside her, soft but sure, began to rise. "Breathe. This can't be happening. Breathe. Say something." Her voice returned, softer now. "If you'd just look me up. ... My name is Isabella Rivera. You'll see." "Save it," the officer muttered. "We've heard it all." The backseater knees shook. Her gown had torn at the seam. She stared at her reflection in the plexiglass divider. Mascara smudged. Dignity cracked. All she'd done was walk. Still, here she was, stripped of everything except her name. She closed her eyes. Not again. Not again, outside. A man across the street raised his phone and began to film. The cruiser. Doors slammed shut, sealing her inside like a verdict had already been delivered. Isabella sat rigid, the cuffs biting deeper as her wrists swelled. Her voice had no place in the space around her. She tried to breathe, tried to remember the grounding exercises her therapist taught her after college. 5 things you can see. For you can touch, but all she could feel was the hard plastic seat and the dull throb in her arms. Outside, the officers huddled near the front of the vehicle, talking low, occasionally glancing back at her. She said, "Rivera," Jensen muttered. "Like that's supposed to mean something." Blake shrugged. "They always got some fancy name." She watched their mouths move from the back seat, but the windows were thick, distorted. The streets were still empty except for the couple. Across the road, who hadn't moved, the woman whispered to the man, phone still angled up, discreet but steady, nodded. Then Blake opened the door again. "Out." She hesitated. Am I being arrested? Blake rolled his eyes. Step out. I don't understand. You match a description. You want to escalate this? Isabella stepped out slowly, body trembling from cold and fury. Her heels wobbled against the uneven sidewalk. She hadn't felt so exposed since a freshman. Sorority hazing X. This wasn't a prank. This was power, unprovoked. Blake grabbed her elbow and turned her toward the cruiser's hood. Face down, hands flat. She blinked. Why? I haven't face down. Jensen stepped in, grabbing her other arm. You resisting? Oh. He shoved her forward. Her cheek hit the hood with a metallic thud. The heat from the engine seared into her skin, the gold fabric of her dress twisting, tearing open at the hip. She gasped. You're hurting me. Stop resisting, Jensen snapped. I'm not. But they weren't listening. They never had been. Of course she's got attitude, Blake said. Look at her. Designer dress, expensive watch, probably stole it. That stopped her breath cold. In that moment, she wasn't Isabella. Rivera, keynote speaker, Stanford graduate, CEO's daughter. She was a threat, a stereotype, a brown body in the wrong place. She stared down at the cracked sidewalk beneath the cruiser, watching a trail of ants wind past the tires. Tell dispatch. We've got her, Blake said. 10-4, Jensen replied. Still across the street, the couple kept filming. The woman whispered, This isn't right. The man nodded, already uploading. Back at the hood of the car, Blake snapped pictures of her. I definitely recovered. From her crushed clutch hand muttered Isabella Rivera. What, like TikTok famous? She didn't respond. Her cheek was still pressed to steel. She couldn't move, couldn't think beyond the white noise screaming in her head. You live around here? Jensen asked. Yes, 3 blocks away. I was walking home. It's not a crime. No, but trespassing is, Blake said, as if the words were toys he could throw. Where's the proof I did anything? Don't need proof to detain, Jensen said with a smirk. Her legs gave slightly, and she caught herself on the hood, the engine still humming beneath her palms. It was humiliation by 1,000 cuts. Somewhere in the distance, a new sound joined the night, the static of a police radio, sputtering with an update that hadn't reached them yet. The car door slammed behind her, swallowing the night. Isabella sat frozen, wrists twisted awkwardly behind her back. Her cheeks still stung from the cruiser hood. Her breath came in shallow bursts, fogging up the divider glass in front of her. Her dress, once glowing under gala lights, now clung to her. In wrinkled folds, torn at the hip, stained with street dust. She leaned forward slightly. My name is Isabella Rivera. Google me. Blake turned in his seat, grinning like it was a game. Sure, sweetheart. And I'm the Queen of England, Jensen chuckled. You're not the first to pretend to be rich. She's committed. To the character, though, Blake added. Got the whole spoiled brat act down. Check my ID, she insisted. My address is, people fake that too. You folks always got a story, she stopped. You people. 2 words, razor-edged, not loud, not even angry. Just thrown like a casual insult that didn't need effort to hurt. Something inside her recoiled, something ancient, tired and already bruised. The same ache from childhood mornings when the principal asked if her name was Isabella Rodriguez and looked confused when she corrected him. The day in middle school when security followed her through the boutique while her white classmates tried on makeup. The substitute teacher, who asked if her parents were legal, was 12 when someone first told her, You're not really American, though. Here she was again, 24, cuffed, dismissed, doubted. I didn't lie. She whispered half to them, half to herself. Blake twisted the rearview mirror toward her reflection. You think money makes you better? I didn't say that. Her breathing slowed, but not from calm, because the weight of old scars was rising in her chest like concrete. She remembered her mother's voice in the kitchen, hushed but sharp. We can't afford to act like we belong, even when we do. She blinked hard, fighting back heat in her eyes. You know what gets me? Jensen said, casually scrolling his phone. People like you always throw around names and think we'll back off. You could have just answered questions, Blake added. I did, she said, voice steady now. You never listened. The car was still parked, engine running. The officers waited either for orders or for something to justify what they already did outside. Her cracked phone lay in the gutter, screen flickering weakly. It buzzed once, then stopped. She stared ahead. The divider glass reflected her face. In layers smudged makeup, swollen lip, dozen quiet injustices etched deep beneath her skin, she exhaled. You're going to regret this, she said quietly. Blake snorted. And why's that? From the sidewalk, a voice rang out faintly, just reaching the car. Hey, is this being recorded? Blake turned, frowning. Who said that? More voices outside. Footsteps approaching. A growing hum. Jensen reached for the radio. Dispatch, Unit 341 standing by. Situation developing. Outside the squad car, the crowd was growing. What began as a quiet couple filming across the street had turned into a circle of glowing phone screens. The woman who'd recorded the first video now stood shoulder to shoulder with a younger man. In a hoodie, Jared, software engineer who'd just finished a coding sprint and was walking home with a boba tea, he squinted through the car window. They cuffed her for walking? He muttered. Yeah, the woman beside him whispered. Didn't even ask her name first. Jared tapped his phone screen twice. His voice was calm, clear, and deliberate. We're live in L.A., he said. These officers just handcuffed a Latina woman in an evening gown. No explanation, no charges, just walking while brown. The live stream caught fire. Within minutes, angry emojis flooded the feed. Comments poured in. That's Isabella Rivera. What the hell did I just watch? Send this to the news. Now, inside the cruiser, Isabella sat still, though her body buzzed with rising tension. She saw the shifting glow of screens through the window, heard the murmurs. The officers noticed too. What the hell is happening? Blake asked, turning to Jensen. Jensen's radio crackled. Unit 341, come in. Be advised, stand by a pause. In a second voice, sharper, authoritative. Do not bring her in. I repeat, do not proceed. Blake frowned. What? Dispatch say again? The voice returned, louder now. Officers, you are instructed to release the individual immediately, confirm her identity Isabella Rivera, then disengage. Jensen's eyes widened. You serious? More static, then confirm visual. The mayor's office is on the line. And someone from legal. Blake looked through the rear window. What the hell is she? Royalty? I know, Jensen muttered. She's Rivera. A single word. But it landed heavy. Blake reached for the door handle. We need to let her go. Isabella didn't speak. She simply stared back at them, jaw tight, expression unreadable. Outside, the live stream camera panned as more people arrived, some walking dogs, others in pajamas. The air buzzed with digital energy and disbelief. The night had changed, no longer just another silent injustice. It had been seen. Blake opened the back door. You're free to go. Her arms were shaking as he reached to unlock the cuffs. He hesitated. Sorry for the she pulled away slightly. Don't, she said quietly. No apology could erase it, as the cuffs clicked open. Jared's voice came through clearly from the sidewalk. They're letting her go, just like that. His phone. Lens caught everything. The loosened handcuffs, the officer's shifting eyes, and the woman stepping out. Into a wave of flashing lights and righteous rage. The cuffs hit the pavement with a soft metallic clink, but the sound cut sharper than a gunshot. Isabella straightened slowly, brushing invisible dust from her ruined dress. Her hands trembled, but her eyes were steady dark, unblinking, locked on Blake like she'd peeled back everything false about him and found nothing beneath. Blake took a half step back. Did she? Say Rivera, he muttered. Jensen's mouth moved, but no sound came. From across the street, a voice called out, That's Carlos Rivera's daughter, the billionaire. Blake blinked as if the name hit him twice, once in the gut, once in. The career Carlos Rivera, the man behind Elitech, the nation's fastest growing AI firm, billionaire, visionary, political donor. The man whose foundation quietly funded police body camera programs across 3 states. The man who'd spoken on Capitol Hill about unconscious bias wrapped in armor and authority. The man who knew everyone. I didn't know, Jensen stammered, shifting uneasily. Isabella didn't answer. She stepped away from the cruiser, toward the crowd now forming with purpose instead of passivity. Her presence changed the air. Like a glass had shattered, and the silence was now filled with exposed nerves and clicking cameras. You knew enough. She finally said, "You just didn't care." Blake opened his mouth, then closed it again. The earlier arrogance had drained from his face, replaced by something smaller. Fear, maybe, or understanding. But far too late, a fresh voice pierced the moment, a deep, commanding baritone, impossibly calm. "She doesn't need to explain herself to you." Heads turned. A black SUV slid to a halt at the corner. The door opened, and out stepped Carlos Rivera. No entourage, no press. Just a tall, sharply dressed man with silver temples, fire in his eyes, and a storm in his silence. He walked toward them with precision. "Officers," he said. Not shouting, not smiling. "You've made an error." Blake swallowed. "If we had known you didn't ask, that's the point." Carlos placed a firm hand on Isabella's shoulder. Her eyes glistened, but didn't fall. "We'll handle it from here," he said coldly. Behind him, phones filmed every second. "Jared's still live streaming," whispered to the camera. Carlos Rivera just showed up. "It's over for these cops, Carlos." Rivera didn't walk, he arrived. The moment his polished leather shoes touched the asphalt, the atmosphere bent around him. Conversations quieted. Flashing lights paused. Even the wind seemed to hold its breath. No limo. No entourage. No suit. Jacket, just a fitted black shirt, sleeves rolled up to the forearms, exposing a Rolex and a jagged scar from his construction days. He walked straight toward the officers without so much as a glance at the crowd. Isabella saw him and inhaled sharply. Her posture shifted not because he'd save her, but because he witnessed her. That was enough. Carlos stopped inches from officer. "Blake, he said flatly. "What's your name?" Blake hesitated. "Officer Blake, sir." "Sir," Carlos repeated, voice cool as steel. "Now I'm sir." Blake lowered his gaze. "You put your hands on my daughter." She matched Carlos, raised a finger. "Don't lie." Blake's jaw clenched. "We followed protocol." "No, you followed assumption." He turned slightly, eyes flicking to Jensen. "You too. You looked at her and decided she was danger. Not because of action, but complexion." Neither man spoke. Carlos took a breath and looked at Isabella, his face softening just slightly. Her arms still bore faint red rings from the handcuffs. "Told you to always walk with pride," he said gently. "I did," she replied. They didn't care. His jaw tightened, but his voice never rose. The fury stayed buried beneath decades of boardrooms, debates, knowing when to crush without raising a fist. Turning back to the officers, Carlos's voice dropped an octave. "You'll hear from my legal team." Blake nodded stiffly. "And the world." He paused. "Make sure your pensions are in order." The words didn't need fire. They cut colder without it. Behind him, Jared's live stream was still rolling over 180,000 viewers now. Comments flooded in like a digital riot. "He's not yelling. That's scarier. This man is ice. Absolute ice. This is how you destroy someone." Without touching them, as Carlos guided Isabella toward the waiting SUV, the crowd parted wordlessly. Someone from the department, likely a superior, had finally arrived, speaking into a radio, eyes wide. Too late, Carlos opened the door for her himself, before stepping in. Isabella turned back once. She didn't speak. She didn't need to. Her silence held a verdict. Carlos followed, closing the door gently behind them. Inside the SUV, he spoke quietly. "Are you okay?"
"Al."
She looked out the window. Not yet. The car pulled away into the glowing night while behind them. The careers of 2 men had already begun to unravel. The video ran on every screen. Cable news anchors looped it hourly. Social media broke it into fragments, her face against the cruiser, the words "you people always lie." The moment her wrists were released, like it was an act of mercy. Clips circulated under hashtags. Hashtag walking while brown. Hashtag Isabella Revora. Hashtag cuffed in couture. .isabe. LA watched it all from her penthouse. Perched on a sleek leather couch that suddenly felt like a stranger. The lights were dimmed. Her gown hung in shreds across a chair, untouched since she peeled it off hours ago. She wore a sweatshirt, now her father's oversized and scent-worn. The footage played silently on the massive wall-mounted screen. She saw herself in third person, as if watching a stranger endure it all. The freeze frames were surgical, brutal. Her expression, their hands. The cuffs. Carlos stood behind the couch, hands in his pockets. He hadn't spoken since they returned. His eyes stayed on the screen, but his thoughts were elsewhere far back, perhaps. To another roadside in 1998. When a younger Carlos was dragged out of his Porsche at gunpoint for looking out of place near Beverly Hills, she hadn't forgotten. That day either, her mother had cried in the passenger seat. Not because Carlos was hurt, because she'd warned him not to drive the red one that night. "You don't need to be angry," Carlos finally said. "Let the machine work for you now." "I'm not angry," Isabella whispered. "I'm tired." He nodded. "That's worse." They sat in silence as another clip played Jared's live stream, shaky and raw. They cuffed her like she didn't matter. And now, look who showed up. A younger version of herself flickered in her mind. 5th grade. School field trip, standing outside the Science Museum, when a security guard pulled her aside for wandering. She had just gone to the bathroom. Her mother's words echoed again. "Be quiet. Be polite. Let them win today, so you can win later." But when was later? She looked at her father. "This isn't over, right?" He met her gaze. "No, this is just the beginning." Her phone lit up. Hundreds of missed calls, interview requests, statements demanded. A growing roar from a public that wanted to assign her a role. Victim, activist, symbol, spokesperson. She wasn't sure she could carry all that, but she would. Speak not for fame. For the ones who never got their camera moment, she reached for the remote and turned off the screen. Tomorrow, she would answer. The city was watching 30-6 hours after the incident. Isabella stood beside her father, under a white canopy framed by podiums, wires, and microphones. Cameras lined the plaza steps like sentries. Behind them, the words Los Angeles City Hall gleamed faintly in the sun. Ironic in their silent promise of justice, Carlos stepped to the microphone first. "I'm not here as a billionaire today," said. "I'm here as a father, a Latino, and a man who's watched systems fail, people who look like me over and over." His voice didn't shake. It didn't need to, he continued. "We are launching a national initiative, racial accountability. In state enforcement, it's policy, oversight, enforcement, all of it, it begins now." The crowd didn't cheer. Not yet. It wasn't that kind of moment. It was heavier, more real. Carlos paused. "I don't want another father pacing a kitchen at 1 a.m. wondering if his child made it home. I don't want another daughter humiliated for being visible. This ends here." He stepped aside. Then Isabella walked forward, hair pulled back, suit sharp and unflinching. "I shouldn't be the face of this," she said. "I survived because a camera was rolling. But there are thousands of stories just like mine with no lens, no live stream, no last-minute rescue." She looked across the press pit, into every blinking red light. "I don't want performative apologies. I want change. I want officers trained, policies rewritten, communities protected from the very hands that claim to serve them." A ripple moved through the crowd, then a new voice joined from the side. Stage, Chief Lourdes Marquez. She hadn't been on the schedule, but she stepped up anyway. "I've worn this badge 25 years, she said, her voice steady. "And I've buried more than one complaint under a desk because I was told it would make waves." She looked directly at Isabella. "This isn't new," she said, firm. "It's just finally being seen." The silence that followed was thunderous. Cameras clicked. Journalists scribbled. Then came the name's official public. Irreversible. Officer Brandon Blake. Officer Kyle Jensen. Terminated. Under investigation, the reporters shouted questions. Isabella stood tall. Someone asked, "What do you want to say?" To those officers now. She glanced sideways at her father, then faced the crowd again. "I don't need to speak to them," she said. "They've already been heard." Behind her, the Rays logo flickered to life on a massive screen. The article went live at dawn. No interviews, no press agent. Just a single link shared on Isabella's personal page, with 3 quiet words. "Please read this." By 9 a.m. it had been reposted over 2 million times. The headline read, "I'm not special because I'm rich. I'm special because I survived." She wrote it in one sitting, barefoot, sitting cross-legged on the floor beside her father's study window. Her fingers trembled over the keyboard, not from fear, but from responsibility. This wasn't just about her anymore. "The world saw me because of my last name," she wrote. "But what about the others? The names you'll never know? Ones who didn't have a camera? The ones who were polite, careful, quiet, and still didn't make it home?" She listed them, not with dates or headlines, just names. First names. Last names, ages. Tyrell, 17. Lucia, 22. Marco, 19. Tanisha, 31. And so many more that I'll never meet. But I carry them now. She didn't ask for sympathy. She demanded recognition. I'm tired of a system where justice requires wealth to be believable. The words hit harder than any press conference. Carlos entered the room as she typed the final line, said nothing, just placed a warm mug beside her, his hand resting briefly on her shoulder. "We can't build a world where dignity depends on money." She closed the laptop and exhaled. Hours later, it was everywhere: cable news, education panels, social justice blogs. Schools printed it for morning discussion. Community leaders cited it. Celebrities posted excerpts, but the most powerful shares came from those who had never been heard before. A grocery clerk in Atlanta, a retired veteran in Phoenix, a teenage girl in Detroit who posted, "She wrote this for us." The next morning, Isabella received an invitation from a local youth center. No podiums, no cameras, just a room full of kids with questions and eyes. Full of something rare. Trust. The youth center didn't have much. Peeling blue paint. A basketball hoop missing its net. Posters with bent corners and words like perseverance and courage faded by the sun. But the room was full of energy, of voices, of hope. When Isabella walked in, the room fell into a hush. She didn't wear a suit. No makeup team. Just jeans, sneakers, and the same sweatshirt from the night after it all happened. One girl whispered, "That's her." Another boy mumbled, "She's the one who stood up to the cops." She wasn't there to give a speech. She sat in the circle with them, cross-legged on the gym floor, surrounded by folding chairs and wide eyes. A girl with braids raised her hand hesitantly. "Were you scared?" Isabella paused, then nodded. Double quotes. "Yes," she said. "But fear's not weakness. It's a signal. It tells you what matters." The room was quiet again, but this time it wasn't ought, it was understanding. She didn't tell them to be strong. She showed them what strength could look like, showing up even when your voice shakes. A boy from the back asked, "Why did they treat you like that?" "'Cause they didn't see me," she answered. "They saw what they expected to see." Didn't flinch as she said it. Her voice had grown stronger, fuller, still tired, maybe, but no longer afraid. "I can't fix the whole world," she continued. "I can help make it see better." A counselor handed her a drawing. From one of the kids' crayon figures, a police car, a girl in a gold dress with sparkles. Above it, in careful handwriting, "You made them look at us different." She blinked away tears, holding the picture gently outside. The sun was setting over South LA, spilling gold across the sidewalk. She stepped out into it slowly, breathing. In the dusk, her phone buzzing with another alert she chose not to check. 5 minutes. That's all it had taken to be profiled, cuffed, humiliated. But now, those 5 minutes had turned into something else entirely. A spark, a voice, a movement, as the kids waved from the window. Isabella smiled. She wasn't a headline anymore. She was a beginning.